Hi, as you may know, I recently set up a match between the Liverpool of 2020 and the Barcelona of 2011 using Football Manager 2012 to help me. I thought whilst I'm on there, why don't I have a look at some of the superstars of today and see what they were like on there, see how many of them had the potential that they would go on to live up to, and how many of them maybe didn't look so good back then. So that's what I've done over the course of this video. I hope you enjoy it. So first up we have Alisson, now of course of Liverpool. In this case I was able to pick you up for £1.5 million from Internacional in Brazil. As you can see, hasn't played a senior game yet of any kind. Having a look at his stats, as you can see here, rushing out is one of his biggest strengths. Very good distribution as well, throwing 15, kicking 14. Also quite eccentric. And then looking at some other stuff, for an 18-year-old is reasonably good with handling, one-on-ones, command of area. So overall, you can clearly see here that he does have the potential to become a very decent goalkeeper. In terms of the coaching reports, they've used the term here fairly good, saying he's short of having the required potential to be better than Joe Hart. So given where both Alisson and Joe Hart are now, 9 years later, they were a little bit wrong on that one, weren't they? So yeah. So whilst they clearly say he's got potential, they didn't quite realise just how far his potential would go exactly. So yeah, so that's Alisson. Next we have John Stones. Now you're probably thinking he's a centre back, which yes, he indeed is. But back in 2011, he was clearly considered to be a right back. Most unbelievably, he was actually on Barnes' transfer list, and we were able to pick him up for a measly £3.5 grand, well short of the near 50 million that City would go on to pay for him. In terms of his attributes, well, for a guy who was clearly considered not good enough for Barnsley, not really expecting much here. But of course, first touch of 3, technique of 5, composure of 8. They're none of the attributes you would expect to see for a ball playing centre half. What's worse, positioning 5, anticipation 9, marking 9, heading 3. I mean, that's awful for a centre back, isn't it? So they don't get too many players wrong, the researchers, but John Stones definitely is one of them. And as you can see here, Brian Kidd says that he's far from good enough. He's far from being good enough for the City squad. So yeah, I'm sorry, but you got that one completely wrong, guys. Next, on to Virgil Van Dijk, one of I think he's the most expensive centre back in the world, isn't he? Here he is as a 20-year-old, very fresh face there. Taking a look at his attributes, as you can see, even at this point he does have a lot of encouraging qualities. Tackling, marking of 14, first touch of 12, but on the other hand, his positioning is only 8. That's very low, really, isn't it? But then composure and concentration 14, influence 6. That's increased dramatically since then. In terms of his physical attributes, strength 14. That's decent. Not a great deal of pace. Not that good in the air. So yeah, those physical attributes have certainly increased tenfold since then. In terms of the coaching reports, it says he's some way off having the required potential to be better than Company, but does say he has the potential to be a useful player. So it's the same as Alisson, really. They've clearly recognised he's got potential, but not quite the level of potential that it turned out that he really had. He hasn't. They clearly didn't expect him to reach the elite levels that we see him playing at today. And that's understandable really, I suppose. At this stage, only 2 senior games to his name, and I was able to pick him up for £4 million. Next up, Aymeric Laporte. He and Van Dijk, if they ever did play together, would be undoubtedly the greatest centre-half partnership the Premier League has ever seen. And again, there's not really a lot to write home about here, is there? No attribute at all is above 13, even that's his fitness. His pace is down at 9 and acceleration down at 10. He's a positioning 8, concentration 8, concentration 9, composure 9, first touch 8, heading 12, CC, tackling 10, technique 10. So none of these attributes really are what you would expect to see from possibly the world's best ball playing centre back. So again, I think that's another one that we unfortunately have to say that they've got wrong. Not quite Stones level wrong, but still pretty wrong. Looking at the stats here, short of having the potential to be better than Company, and has the potential to be a fairly good player. And as you can see, he's on the star ratings, he's well below Van Dijk there. So, and this bit here, limited defender. There's nothing about him these days that has the mark of a limited defender, is there? So, yeah, I would have to say that they've got that one wrong. I was actually able to. He didn't have a professional contract with Athletic, so I was able to sign him for just a £1 million compensation fee. So, yeah, nothing like the over £50 million City were going to actually pay for him. Next on the list, another one that they got wrong on the same levels as John Stones, Andy Robertson. Of course, Liverpool were able to pick him up for a bargain £8 million. Well, you don't get any better bargain than this here. Back in 2011, he was available for nothing from 3rd Division Queen's Park. If you look at him now, he's known for his unbelievable energy, his crossing ability, his determination in defence. None of those things are really applicable here. Acceleration 5, pace 6, stamina 7. I mean, even there's not really anything here to get excited over, is there? Technique 11, tackling 10, work rate 12. Yeah, so not really any attributes there that you would say that this guy's going to be a Champions League winner one day. But of course, that's exactly what he's turned into, and it won't surprise you to see here, far from good enough, far from being good enough for the Manchester City squad. So yeah, I'm sorry guys, but that's another fail for you there. Next, we're on to a guy who I would consider to be the German James Milner, Joshua Kimmich. Signed by Pep, I think, in his final season at Bayern. Pep loved him. His ability to learn and play at multiple positions. Looking at him here, at the moment, he's very much a defensive midfielder. Very good team player, which is something that he's got on to show in his career, so they're right about that. Decent tackler, but again, nothing else really here to get you excited. Reports he has the potential to be a decent player. I think it's safe to say that nowadays he's a lot more than that. And in terms of signing him, again, like Laporte, he didn't have a professional contract, so was only required to pay a compensation fee of 120 grand. So far they've actually got more of these wrong than they have right. Who's next on the list? Bernardo Silva. What a player he is now. And to be fair, look, he's only 16. But looking at his standout attribute here is his work rate. At this stage, he's at 13. Nowadays, it's definitely a 20. But even then, it's good to see that was still one of his strengths. Creativity 12, passing 12, first touch 12. I suppose these stats for a 16-year-old aren't too bad at all. Again, you probably won't be looking at this and thinking he's going to be a star, but is another one who looks like, even at this point, he had decent potential, if not brilliant potential. In terms of the coaches, again, has the potential to be a decent player, some way off having the potential to be better than Yaya Toure. Of course, we know that that's now not the case. And again, like some of the other players here, he didn't have a professional contract, so only had to pay compensation, and that was a fee of just under 500 grand. Of course, back then the Southampton Academy had a few decent prospects I could have signed. There was Luke Shaw, who I could have got for £1 million compensation. Callum Chambers, who on this game was actually playing as a right winger rather than a defender. But in the end, I decided to go with Ward-Prowse because I needed another midfielder to complete this team. Ward-Prowse would actually, I believe, go on to make his debut the following season on the opening day against City, if I recall correctly. I think we won 3-2 that day. And since then, he's established himself as a regular in the Southampton side and a bit of a dead ball specialist. Hasn't gone on to be one of the Premier League's top players and an England regular, like some might have thought he would have done. But being a regular starter in a Southampton team that's been well established in the Premier League now is certainly no mean feat, and he has managed to get into the England squad and play a couple of games, so he has done very well for himself. Looking at him here again, is on the most recent edition of Football Manager. His set piece stats and his crossing ability are very, very high. Definitely close to the 20 mark. Can't remember exactly what it is, but no sign of that here. Crossing 2, corners 6, free kicks 8. So clearly, as a 16-year-old, he wasn't viewed as the dead ball specialist that he is now. What are his standout qualities? So he's got work rate of 13. He's got a passing of 12. So he has developed into a good passer of the ball. So it's probably appropriate that this was one of his standout attributes even back then. Yeah, so sorry about that, we got cut off there. So yeah, just to finish off on Ward-Prowse, looking at his coach report, got the potential to be a fairly good player, which is pretty accurate. He's not a world class or a standing player, but he is fairly good, as shown by the fact that he's a regular in Southampton's side now and has played a couple of times for England. So yeah, overall I'd say they got that one relatively right. If his dead ball and crossing ability had been reflected here, then they would have got it perfectly right. So moving on now to Riyad Mahrez. The first thing that stands out here is that he's actually listed as French. Of course, as you know by now, he's played many times for Algeria and gone on to be one of their best players. Also, you may notice his position. Again, his only positions are on the left-hand side, whereas he's actually made his name as playing as an inside forward on the right, cutting inside. Taking a look at his attributes, determination of 17. That's interesting. I don't actually know what his determination is nowadays, but I wouldn't have guessed it'd be that high. Acceleration of 16, pace of 14. Yeah, I'd say they're pretty good. Flair of 14, again for a 20-year-old, not bad. Dribbling 13, first touch 13, technique 15. So yeah, there's some pretty reasonable stats here. Now, in terms of signing him, we had to pay just over £2 million to bring him in from Havre, who we never actually played for. In fact, he was in their reserve side when I went to search for him. So yeah, playing in the reserve, he was in the reserve team of a French second division side. So that gives you an indication of where he was in his career at this point. Just the 27 games to his name there. I don't know what division that team are in. Semi-professional. So yeah, so at this stage only 27 games at a semi-professional level to his name. So yeah, certainly not even close to establishing himself really. Having a look at the coaching report for him, Mahrez has the potential to be a decent player. Some way off having the required potential to be better than David Silva. I'd say that's definitely right. But yeah, so I think decent is probably I think he's probably gone on to be better than that. He's obviously won the title with both City and Leicester. Again, he's not world class. He's probably in that next level down from that. Selfish player, it says here. I think a lot of people would agree with that. So again, should we give them a pass on that? I'd say they probably have just about got it right with Mahrez there. So let's move on to the next one, and that's Sadio Mane, who I can't actually play because he doesn't have a work permit, but I thought for the purposes of this, could still sign him. Was able to pick him up for a measly £500,000. The Mets, where again, like Mane, he was in the like Mahrez, sorry, he was in the reserve side, so wasn't even in the first team squad. At this stage, doesn't have a single league appearance to his name. Taking a look at his attributes. Again, there's a lot of 13s here, as you can see: crossing, dribbling, first touch, passing, technique, teamwork 15. His physical attributes, one of his pace, certainly, and acceleration there certainly aren't correct. If you look at the way he's become an essential part of Klopp's team, he wouldn't have been able to do that without his pace and acceleration, amongst other things. Such great balance, dribbling, his finishing 9, that's nowhere near good enough. So again, I think this is one where we've got to say that the researchers didn't get it right. Of course, but it's impossible to recognise every player's potential from the start. I'm obviously just doing this for my own interest and amusement. I'm not trying to put anybody down who from Sports Interactive or anything like that. Just think it's interesting to have a look at how players were in their earlier days. £500,000. If Liverpool had picked him up then, rather than the close to £40 million they paid for him, then it really would have been one of the signings of the century. Let's have a look at his coaching report, which says Mane isn't good enough for the Manchester City squad. Well, all I can say is that I absolutely love to have him in the team now. And finally, that leaves one more. Harry Kane. This point, an 18-year-old who we were able to sign for £3 million. He's just got that one loan spell at Leyton Orient on his experience at this point, but finishing a 14, so that's good to see. But again, a lot of these attributes well off what they would develop into. Off the ball 12, that's definitely a lot higher now. Anticipation 6, wow, that's low, isn't it? And let's have a look at his coach report, which says he has the potential to be a fairly good player. That doesn't quite do him justice, does it? Nor does this comment here. Fairly poor intelligence on the football pitch. So that pretty much brings it to an end. Another one just to quickly mention: Kepa Arrizabalaga was able to sign him up on a free. Bilbao actually released him, so I picked him up for nothing. I believe he is now the world's most expensive goalkeeper, but clearly no, Athletic Bilbao didn't have a crystal ball, otherwise they wouldn't have released him. So yeah, so if we have a look at these 11 players here. I would say they got it massively wrong with 3 of them. So that's not really it's not a bad effort, is it? Like I said, I'm not trying to put the researchers down or anything like that. It's impossible to spot every great player, especially straight away. I just personally like looking at I like going back and looking at these things and seeing how many turned out as expected, how many were better, how many were worse. So yeah, that pretty much brings this to an end. So yeah, so here's just a list of what each of the players cost. As you can see, all of the players came to a total of £14 million, whereas in real life their cost was over £400 million. That's obviously not to mention Kane and Ward-Prowse, who haven't cost anything because they've came through their respective sides' academies. If you add their value to it, then yeah, you're probably around the £600 million mark in total, aren't you? So yeah, and that's the end of it really. I just thought that was something that would be interesting to do. Thanks very much.